it's your boy Ancient Albatross here again with the Cypher Unlimited crew -1. Unfortunately, Anthony is stuck at work due to some emergencies on his museum ship. But we have the lovely Alphadean with us here tonight. And just as a quick reminder, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that follow button on Twitch and that subscribe button on YouTube. Really helps our channel out if you have not done so already. Yeah, but Dean, what are we doing here tonight?
Well, you know, Al, like I said, as always, we always like to get together, have some fun. We're going to talk about basically misconceptions about the Cypher system, you know, and we came up with a top 10 list. We didn't put it out there for the masses to, you know, give us their feedback. We just kind of compiled it from the things that we've seen on the server and online and so on and so forth, talking to people here and there. So we've got a top 10 list. We have a couple of honorable mentions that we're going to get into in just a moment. Al's going to start us out with those, but give me just a second to say, hey, Ken, thanks for letting us know that you have Thursdays free. We could have used you tonight. We had no clue. You gotta keep us in the loop. But at any rate, everybody, welcome. Thank you, everyone here who's you know, gonna hang out with us tonight and talk about these top 10. Probably won't be a long video tonight, but guess what? It's gonna be interesting because we have opinions. So Al, get us started. What's that first honorable mention we got?
So first of our two honorable mentions here is the GM not rolling dice isn't fun. I believe that's a very big misconception because, you know, most games, you know, the GM rolls dice, but without the need of rolling dice in Cypher System, it really lets the GM focus on what is the actual fun, quote unquote, because again, fun is subjective. But for me, the fun is being able to push that storyline, being able to push the, you know, thinking about where things are going to go next instead of worrying about the math of the dice or whatever have you. The dice rolls all on the player, which I think is more fun because now it's completely on them whether they pass or fail. It has nothing to do with your rolling. And yeah, I just personally think that's more fun.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree with that. I mean, overall, I think the fact that I felt really weird when I first encountered the whole concept of the GM not rolling dice. And as much as I love dice, as many dice as I buy, as everyone can see, I'm always posting new dice. You would think I'd have a problem with this, but I really, really don't. For the simple fact that, as Al said, it allows me to really focus on the story. It allows me to manipulate ideas. I'm not worrying about the math behind, you know, a dice roll. And it's really, it's freeing, you know, and I'm just saying, I personally, my whole idea behind it shifted, you know. I mean, you're going to hear me make reference to my paradigm shift throughout this video because that's what this was all about. You know, these misconceptions is when I shifted my thought process about Cypher in of itself is when things started to grow and coalesce and take shape into this wonderful love affair that I've been into right now. So yeah, that's my take on it. And since I'm done with that one, I'm going to jump right into the next one, which we're giving an honorable mention to. Is a lot of people say Numenera isn't compatible with the rest of Cypher System, which I do not understand. For the simple fact that the Strange and the Cypher System grew, the Cypher System core rulebook, I should say, grew right from its roots in Numenera. Numenera, just like if you pay attention to any of their settings, all have rules, mechanics, or and so on and so forth that don't necessarily show up in the Cypher System rulebook. This in of itself gives you flexibility because it makes that particular game in of itself its own thing. But it also gives you other mechanics and things that you could apply to your Cypher System games because it all runs on the same engine.
Exactly. That's where the I guess the biggest misconception is. I mean, I really me coming from I've read most of these books, but I can see someone just looking at Numenera and not having read Cypher System be like, whoa, they're completely different games, right? That's where you're wrong, obviously. And the key part is what you said, the engine is the same. It's the same exact mechanic, resolution, all that stuff is the same. So let's say you're taking stuff from Cypher System, putting it into Numenera, you might have to make a tweak or two here as far as flavoring goes, or maybe specific, because there are some tiny specific mechanics that are different, but easy enough to just adjust it to be Numenera-ish. Very easy. Right. Because the core engine is the same. Yeah. So we want to
So
jump right into this top 10?
yeah, we're gonna start at number 10. And number 10, we've heard a lot of talk about it. It's gone back and forth. People have danced a jig about it. And that's the level system for NPCs and actions are too vague. I would not say they're too vague. As a matter of fact, I would say they are just vague enough. My biggest thing with Cypher System is that there's just enough rules to get out of the way. And what I think is brilliant about it and also makes it work very well is that you're not trying to quantify your NPCs or the actions or whatever else is going on in the game by the same rules that the player uses. So if you can step away from that, it simplifies your life. And it also makes it possible for your NPC to do whatever you needed to do with a very simple mechanic. Apply a level, okay? If you want one of their abilities to be tougher, make that a higher level ability. It's a no-brainer because you know the players are going to be rolling against that level of difficulty for whatever you need to happen. So really what it did was turned all the things you want your NPCs or any action that a player needs to make, it made it completely possible without you needing to toil over the book for 20 minutes to an hour to 2 hours to develop this thing. So
I fully agree with that. And I think what really messes with people's misconceptions, or I guess conceptions, whatever you want to call it in this case, is that the book puts a big emphasis on the level of the NPC or the creature or whatever have you being the basis of everything, even though there are plenty of creatures in the book already that say, hey, even though it's a level 3 creature, this specific attack is a level 5 attack, or you know, if it's getting attacked with a certain kind of weapon, its defense is actually a level 6 or whatever have you. Exactly. You have to just think about those little nuances and just apply them yourself. And again, as far as the vagueness of it all goes, you hit the nail on the head where it's just vague enough that you can, like, basically your NPCs are free to do anything within the realm of what's possible for the character within the setting without having to, like you said, toil over the book over a certain specific rules. Like maybe the character might be a grappler, or like you're not looking up these grappling rules, it's just simply going back to the level of the attack or whatever have you, instead of having to flip back and forth between all these different mechanics. Should you want a really diverse or specialized NPC, they all really, everything boils down to the same mechanic resolution. So even though the action list, or you know, there's no real list, but even though it's kind of vague, it's not really, in that you can really have it do specifically what you need it to do, and there's no looking through the rule book to make that happen. It kind of just goes.
Exactly.
Oh yeah,
exactly. So take us into the next one now.
So at number 9, we have characters can't die, damaging pools nerfs the character, or that resource management sucks. I mean, the resource management part of this goes into that. I mean, that's the whole basis of Cypher System, right? I think it just takes a little bit of a shift in your mindset, right? Because a lot of people come from D&D or other games where like you have hit points and you have your stats, right? In Cypher System, it kind of melded together, but they're melded together in such a way where it makes sense. And that kind of also loops into your characters like dying or nerfing their pools or whatever, as far as impairments or whatever go. Your resource management has to be on point, otherwise your character becomes at risk of dying. And a lot of the times at lower levels, you don't really see it too often, because at level or tier 1, characters are pretty darn resilient. It's when you start getting to the higher tiers where the monsters can have a little more oomph to them, where you start seeing the characters can be in peril. That's not to say you can't put the characters in peril at tier 1. It's very easy to do. But again, a lot of people feel like the characters are too sturdy, where again, if with the right mindset, they can die very easily. Yeah.
Well, you know, and many people might look at number 9 as 3 distinct things, but they're not. And I think we combined them there for a reason in that manner. And I'm going to jump right in and say it like this. You know, we're talking about coming from D&D where characters are paper mache at first level, you know, and looking at a tier 1 Cypher System character, you're probably looking at a 3rd to 5th level character, you know, in ability and so on and so forth. People complain about nerfing the pools, but this is no different than in Dungeons and Dragons. You know, your hit points are not a damage track. Your hit points are representing the same thing that your pools are representing in Cypher System. Where, because if you think about it, you know, your pools in Cypher System are not a measure of your physicality or your intelligence or so on and so forth. It's a measure of your basically endurance, your mental fortitude, your speed, so on and so forth. That's what those pools are. Your physicality and so on and so forth is represented through your skills and your abilities. So when you break that mold and just look at them for what they are, they've broken down where, you know, in D&D, you get blasted in the head with a psionic attack, you lose a number of hit points, and now you're impaired in all your actions versus intelligence. Same thing with Cypher System. We're just going to damage the pool, so now you have less resources to work with when it comes to doing something mental. Also, there are aspects of Cypher System where, you know, we can go right to the damage track and start bringing you down the scale. You know, the last aspect about resource management sucks. Any game you're in, you're going to have to manage resources. In Dungeons and Dragons, you have to, especially as a spellcaster, you have to be very smart. Oh, wait a minute, I'm going to cast this spell, this level 1 spell, but I'm going to cast it as a level 3. So that's giving up a level 3 slot. And then, you know, I'm going to cast this over here, you know, and so on and so forth. Or if you have specific abilities, you know, you got bonus actions and so on and so forth, you have to be able to basically figure out when is the best time to use these things, because guess what? Is it a short rest, a long rest, so on and so forth, before I get this ability back? It's just a paradigm shift. It's a thought shift in how the abilities are going to be manipulated and sourced out. So that's my take on it. You know, like I said, once I shifted that thought process, I was so much better and I was able to dive into it, you know.
Yep.
You know, and that's just it, you know.
And I will say this one other thing, just because we're on the topic of character death and whatnot. You can make your games very gritty with certain either optional rules or homebrew rules. I just want to specifically mention, because I'm going to start working on it again soon, but my Darkest Dungeon adaptation, very deadly, can be very deadly, especially with the added stress and whatnot. And again, yeah, it's a lot. It can be very fun to be gritty in Cypher.
And let me, you know, just capitalize on what you just said, Al. Once again, everybody, he's going to start doing this Darkest Dungeon thing, and if you get the opportunity to play it, please do, because where he's talking about stress and things like that, that's just basically taking another take on the madness mechanic, you know, that is already in the Cypher books, you know, or insanity or whatever you want to call it. It's just another take. And this is what we're saying about Cypher System's flexibility, allowing you to tailor make your adventures and your worlds to what you need it to be, but all still within the same parameters. So, you know, if you've never played one of his Darkest Dungeon games, but you've played Cypher System, you can jump right into his game and within 5 minutes you're playing. So just wanted to throw that out there. And that's like a perfect segue into combat isn't satisfying. I've heard this argument so many times. And for me, you know, I don't understand how combat isn't satisfying personally, because with Cypher System, first of all, you're encouraged. If I'm playing D&D and I have a two-handed Mercurial greatsword, and, you know, of course it does, I don't know what, 3d6 points of damage or something ridiculous like that, 2d12, whatever the case may be. So I get to swing my sword, I roll versus the character's armor class, and I hit. Okay, what's any different than having the same Mercurial greatsword in Cypher System, rolling it versus the creature's level, and I hit? The cool part about it isn't the mechanic. The cool part about it is, you know, how are you gonna describe that action? You know, Did I bring the sword around over the top of my head while spinning my body, building momentum, shifting the mercurial weight? And so I slice into the creature's body and using that momentum and the weight of the sword to cleave and gut this creature. That's the fun part. That's where you get into it, when you can start telling the story, when you're visualizing, that scene from one of your favorite movies, or, when you watch, The Witcher, on Netflix, and Geralt is, just cutting through a swath of bad guys like they're paper mache. That's the cool stuff. So I think, and I know people get upset because they don't get to roll damage the same way and stuff like that. You know what? You want to add rolling damage into your game? Go for it. They give you the numbers, D4, D6, what have you. You want to add some bonuses to it? I've done it. I have some weapons that are set, they're heavy weapons. They do 6 points of damage. But you know what? In a trained user's hand, they get a +4. So we have weapons that do more damage. Just like I was talking about, grittying it up. Take the vert steps. You want to make like weapons equality. Okay, weapons equality, double the damage, or makes it easier, or the weapon is 1 step easier to wield. There are so many ways for you to polish the combat mechanic.
And I will just take the other side of this coin, because you went the flavorful route. That's like where you derive your pleasure or fun, right? But not everybody is of that mind. A lot of people like, I'm sorry if I mispronounced her name, but Kesrick said in the chat, people like to roll those dice. People like that, I guess, crunchiness to it. And I will say that, again, just on the surface, Cypher System doesn't look too crunchy. But when you're in the thick of it, and you're in combat, this is where things get spicy. You got to manage your resources, especially if you're putting out high tier moves all the time. You got to, again, it comes back to that sort of like that D&D spell slot mindset. Like, am I going to blow my 5 speed to do this thing like 3 times and then just be freaking exhausted afterwards? Am I going to use a couple of low tier abilities a couple of times because I have the edge to mitigate that, cost? It becomes that sort of give and take with yourself. Like, hey, do I want to push myself? Do I want to be a little more reserved based on how maybe the fight is going? And again, I feel like a lot of people's, just from reading the book or not having really played it too much, it seems not crunchy enough for them, where I feel like it has just the right amount of crunch to feel very satisfying. And yeah, I think that's another pretty big misconception when it comes to Cypher System, that it's the combat is not, I mean, again, it's not nearly as crunchy as, let's say, D&D or something, but it is crunchy enough.
Right. I look at it this way. I tell people all the time, Cypher has just enough rules to get out of the way. There are plenty of rules. There are plenty of ways to apply rules and so on and so forth to give you more crunch, if you will. As we like to say, Cypher System is nuanced versus just out in your face crunchy.
Exactly.
So, take us into the next one now.
So next one we got here, sort of related. It's the what is it? Inability versus untrained / practice versus trained versus specialized. All those different verbiages is not clear enough. I think the biggest issue here is people tie the practice / trained together, where if you're practice at something, it should make it 1 step easier, just as if you were trained at an ability. But being practiced at certain like armors or weapons means different things, right? I mean, I'm gonna have to let you speak on this, Dean. I'll be quite frank, I don't know the specifics. But I will say that trained, untrained, that not trained. I'm fucking up my words. You see, this is why it can be a little confusing. I'm gonna let you take off here. I've lost my train of thought.
All right. So I get it that it can be confusing, but in the same breath, if you take it from in the order that we've spoken of them, it basically explains itself. An inability means there is a hindrance of some sort. There's a penalty in using such an ability. Okay. Untrained just means you don't necessarily have any training in an ability. There are lots of things. For example, everybody can run, but everyone isn't a trained runner. Okay, but you can run. So that means you can attempt something without having a penalty. You can just take off and run. Practiced in the same breath. Like, let's take a person who jogs every day. They're a practiced runner. They may not necessarily be a trained runner. No one has given them, training saying, okay, listen, this is how you breathe. This is how you set a pace. This is, these are the rhythms you want to do. Unlike, a person who's gone in the military and we've been trained to run long distances. We've been trained to do certain things. So untrained and practiced are basically no penalty. You can just make a straight roll to do anything. Training denotes that someone has taken the time to give you an intimate understanding. So for you, that thing is a little bit easier. Okay. Now we can take that one step further and we look at someone who's a marathon runner. He's specialized in endurance related items because guess what? 26 miles. I don't know too many people that's going to run 26 miles, and at the end of the day, and just be cool with it. It's not happening. You really need to be indoctrinated into that type of lifestyle. So I think if you look at the progression as it is, inability, you're hindered. There's a problem. Untrained, practiced, hey, you're a normal guy out there in the world who can attempt to do these things because guess what? It's possible for anybody to do it. Trained, okay, you're that guy that has some learning behind him, some education behind him, in order to do this thing. Specialized, you're the cream of the crop. You're the best there is. You're one of the best there is out there in the world because, and that's the thing, you may not be the best in the world, but you are of the best. So, and I think that's the easiest way to wrap your brain around it.
And then, the other phrasing here, practice, as it relates to like weapons and armor, it's all denoted in the book specifically. Like, as far as like, I think if you're not I think everybody's practiced with light weapons, so I don't think that counts.
Right.
But with the medium ones, you incur a penalty if you're not practiced with them. I believe that's a step harder, and if heavy ones are 2 steps harder, again, it could be. And again, once you're practiced at them, the penalty is just gone. Yeah, it's not anything where it's like you're trained at something where you're reducing how hard it, or let's say you're trained at running, you're running, just to go back to the same. Oh, hi Anthony. I just saw him chat. I didn't mean to.
Yeah, I just typed to him. Wish you were here.
But yeah, so when you're trained at running, let's say difficulty 3 running tasks, you're trained at it, becomes difficulty 2. Whereas let's say you're making an attack at something with a medium weapon, if you're not practiced at it, it's 1 step harder because you're just not good at it, and that's the penalty. When you're practiced at it, you just go back to the normal. It doesn't reduce the difficulty of the thing you're doing, it just makes it normal. You're practiced at it. You can do it with enough proficiency that you're not hindered, or hindered is the wrong word to use because that's an actual word, mechanic, but it's not as hard for you. Yeah.
Use that word. That's
but hindered, yes. Yeah. But basically, yeah. So that's where practice can kind of get confusing when it relates to training, specialized in ability, etc. But each piece of equipment or whatever has its own penalty if you're not practiced with it, and if you're practiced with it, just gets rid of it.
Right, and
nice and simple.
And we're getting ready to move, the last one in the top 10 of the first 5, get ready to move towards our top 5 issues. But I'm going to say this, and I don't think I can say it enough. With Cypher System, it's more of a mindset than it is anything else. And I think once people kind of see that it makes it a lot easier. And I'm not saying it's a right way and a wrong way to go about it. I'm not saying that anybody has to adopt, this ideology. I'm just trying to point out, give it a chance. Look at it through a different lens versus the lens that you're sitting with. And the reason why I bring all that up is because the next one I'm getting ready to bring up is a big one, you know, and that Cypher system can't be or isn't tactical enough. And first of all, I hate that word being used with an RPG. Tactics and strategy can be applied anywhere if you understand what they are, number one. Number two, built right into Cypher is a way for you to build your table how you need to see it necessary. You know, just one simple thing like the range bands: immediate, short, long, very long. So, you know, in D&D, point blank range is up to 30 feet. So guess what? That's short range. So anything immediate would be within 5 feet, within basically melee range. All these increments are right there for you. All you have to do is look at your, let's say you're playing on a hex map or a gridded map. Okay, 1 square is immediate, 3 squares is short, 5 squares is long, 9 squares is very long. Boom, done. And now you don't even have to do anything. You don't have to pull out a ruler. You don't have to measure all of this. You literally just broke it down. These are aspects of Cypher system that may not be written out, but they're very apparent if you give yourself the moment to look at them. So for it to be a tactical game or strategic game, it literally depends on what story you're trying to run, you know, because I've run like Star Wars and I literally have this bucket full of, I don't have it near me, but I got a bucket full of like miniatures, Star Wars miniature stormtroopers and all of this. And I did basically Ice Station Zebra, you know, based on old movie version, and had stormtroopers all over the place, had this task force going in. We used the grid. It was great. It was wonderful. But in the same breath, running the other Star Wars game where they went to a planet and they were looking for, you know, this Sith that had been suspended in animation and da 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 da. It was a theater of the mind game. It wasn't necessary for me to go into all of that detail. So that's my 2 cents on that one.
And again, just like as Dean said, it's so easy if you come from D&D, or even if you don't come from D&D, and you happen to have players who are from D&D and like that, like grid-based whatever combat. It's so easy to set it up with just how Dean said. You short range is make it up. I could be wrong. I feel like there is a section of one of these Cypher books that actually details this. Again, I could be wrong. Maybe I read it in some other supplement where it like actually say, hey, you want to use a grid? Here you go. Short distance is 2 squares. Media, or, you know, is 4. Long is 6. Whatever. And even that, right, there's other ways to go about it. You can even, again, if you're more of theory of the mind and people still want to be tactical, it's very easy to whip out, whether you're digital or in home, tokens, whatever have you, little miniatures, just place them vaguely where you think they might go. That helps people a ton out. And then now they're thinking more tactically, even with just having the tokens or minis on the screen or table without a grid, gets people thinking more tactically, because now they have visuals about how far things are apart. It might, you can specify, hey, this is not nearly exact at all, but rough, and people will then start firing off in them. Oh, I can move here, I can move there. And then if again you're of my kind of nature where I don't really come in with maps or anything like that, I do all my stuff like in the moment. So I'll have, let's say in my home game, and it's very easy to do online, you have your, you can draw very freely. I have a whiteboard-ish grid. I usually don't mess with exact distances. I'll place them on the thing, on the map where I think they might be. I'll draw out, again, just for example, maybe they're outside. I'll draw some brushes, like, again, these are not detailed at all, like little ovals or whatever. It's like, hey, this is a tree. This is a rock. This is a so-and-so. And just doing that alone helps so much with adding tactical elements to the game. Like, and I will say this because it is how I personally run my games. I learned early on in our Cypher, I guess, career, and I learned it from a user, or our buddy Tattered King from the Cypher Unlimited Discord. I believe it was Tattered King. And they were telling us how they do their games with with general distances, just how it's listed in the book, short, medium, long, whatever. But instead of using a gridded, exact grid, he'll just use general area maps. So instead of like, a big grid, it'll just be a 3x3 of circles or squares, and like moving from one general area to the next is a short distance, moving two general areas is a short, medium distance, whatever have you. And that works out fantastic as well, just a general area. Like, hey, you're all kind of close to each other, but if you move to this spot, you're now out of that range. And that again works wonders as well.
And that again screams to the flexibility of the system. It screams to the flexibility of the mindset that the MCG crew, Monte Cook and the boys, went in with the game. And they've even told us on more than one occasion that, it is an evolving thing, and it is, hey, what is it? What are you doing at your table? Oh, that's what you're doing? Well, that's the right way to do it. So that's something else you got to remember. Everything is, Cypher System is not a book. It's not a game system that is beholden to the book. It's not raw. The raw isn't always right. The raw isn't the only way. So, Al, let's take us into the top 5.
All right, so starting our top 5 with number 5 here, we have Cypher System character progression isn't long enough / Cypher System isn't good for long-term campaigns. We kind of put these together for obvious reasons, because most of the time people think that they, once they reach a certain level or whatever have you, that the, game can just end, or that, it's too quick to level up because it's only 6 tiers or whatever have you. They feel like they kind of rush to tier 6 and, that's that. There are lots of ways around that sort of conundrum, especially, depending on the kind of GM you are. You can really control the pace of your game just simply by switching from XP-based advancements to milestone advancements. That keeps everyone on the same page, same pace. And yeah, your characters will not over-level anyone or the story, because everyone is staying in line with the story. That's personally how I go about keeping that progression steady, instead of, all at once kind of, ruining that like long-term progression you might kind of get in a campaign. Not that I've run many campaigns. I will be upfront about that.
I personally love campaigns. And I think Cypher System is brilliantly built to run campaigns, especially if you, as the GM, embrace it. My biggest thing with progression when we talk about it is, of course, you can't count on your players, to, do things, the same. You're going to have one person that wants to hoard XP, and you got another person that's going to use XP, and so on and so forth. So, you know what? Real simple. One of the things I did was, like, especially running campaigns, if I'm going to use the XP system and not use milestones, like Al said, if I'm going to use the XP system, all XP earned within the parameters of the game session are spent on rerolls, temporary benefits, long-term benefits, so on and so forth. The only points you get to spend on character progression are the ones that are given at the end of every session, and even with that, guess what? You can control that. You can go, this session was worth 1 point for everybody, but this person earned an extra point for something dynamic they did, and this person may have got 2 for something. You know what? So then everybody is still kind of on the same sheet of music, because guess what? He's got 1 point, this person's got 2 points, this person might have 3. Okay, nobody has enough to buy an advancement yet. Next session, you be a little more generous. Okay, this guy gets 2. The guy who only had 1, he's got 2 more points, but he also got a bonus point. He's got 4. Everybody else, got the standard 2. So guess what? Everybody has enough to advance to another level of advancement. You have that in your control, and it works wonders. Just like the milestone progression works wonders, because you can always say that, guess what? You can map it out as your campaign is running. Okay, when the players get to this particular city because they've encountered this, this, and this, oh, that's enough for them to take an advancement, you know, and so on and so forth. So don't be willy-nilly just throwing XP out there. You know, make it clear to your players what you're trying to do, you know, and have a discussion. And I think that is the crux of making Cypher System run, you know, over the long term. And I mean, let's be honest. Some games are great to play week after week, month after month, year after year. But we all want to play something else sometimes too, you know, and that's something else you can do. If you got more than one GM in your group, guess what? Switch off. Play one game, play this game, play that game, you know, play a couple of different games at the same time. You've got many ways to mitigate, you know, Cypher System progression.
And there are, I mean, I haven't read it much because, again, I have not dealt much in higher tier games. I feel like a part of the book details going beyond tier 6. I don't know how specific it gets.
It's you very can specific.
Also, oh, well, there you go.
I mean, when I say it's very specific, it basically gives the same mechanics that they use, you know, from the beginning, you know, going beyond tier 6. And they even have little things in there to make it more difficult. I think they up the ante on, you know, the amount of experience points it takes. You know, they give suggestions about, okay, when you reach tier 6, you know what, guess what? Now you can move into another focus, you know, but moving into another focus costs you more points. There are so many options with going beyond tier 6 and, you know, trying to turn this into, you know, epic level, you know, an epic level adventure.
Most definitely.
All right. So number 4, number 4. And we hear this all, I mean, we don't necessarily hear it. What we do is we catch the fallout from the idea that Monte Cook Games is a bigger company than it is, you know. And this isn't us making excuses for the company or anything else. It's just that they do handle their business and give you the impression that, you know, they're a big company, you know, but I think the team is maybe 10 to 13 people now, and they live in different portions of the country. You know, they don't even all live in the same city. So they do a lot of their work via online. And, you know, I mean, they have a retreat once a year that they come to and get, you know, where they get together and hang out for maybe a weekend or a week or something like that. But for the most part, you're talking about 13 people who are, you know, servicing a pretty damn big community and, you know, putting out the quality of work that they put out.
And I will say that this number 4 is sort of an asterisk because it's not specifically about Cypher System, but right. It is something that is a very big misconception as far as this whole, you know, Monte Cook Games, you know, goes. They are, you know, like Dean said, quite almost 13, I believe, individuals, like he said. But because of the quality of their work, because of how good they are with their customer service and whatnot, they kind of get this impression that they're kind of huge. And yeah, they're really not. They're just some very dedicated, small team, and it's awesome. They are definitely awesome.
Just want to make mention, Lord and Lady Mills. Yes, you're absolutely right. You could consider each advancement as a level. So, you know, tier 1 is, you know, from level 1 to 4 and so on and so forth, which makes, you know, 20 levels, 24 levels, if you want to look at it like that. So that is pretty cool. That is a pretty cool way to definitely look at that.
All right, we'll move on to number 3 because number 4 is not too much more to talk about there.
Yeah, go ahead. Al.
I just will say one more thing about it. If you ever experience any trouble with your products or whatever, as far as Monte Cook Games goes, there, you know, sometimes you do have issues. I have seen people have issues. Sometimes it might take a couple days if there's like a holiday or something. Just know, again, it's because they are tiny. There's like 2 customer service people, like 1 or 2. I forget who handles it, if it's Tammy and Jen or just Tammy or just Jen or whatever have you. But yeah, they do very hard work. And if they have not gotten back to you in a timely manner, rest assured they will get back to you. They always do. But either way, number 3 here, we have GM intrusions are railroading. which again, just from reading it, if you just only read the book, you don't really have too much like on-hand experience. It can seem that way. It can seem like, hey, the story's going one way, but I actually needed to go this way. Yeah, it can seem very railroading, but the way most, I mean, at least the way I handled, I shouldn't say most GMs, is I use GM intrusions as a way to go with an idea I didn't have before. Like, if the players are doing something, or, you know, it's usually the players that do something that makes me think of something I hadn't thought of before. It's like, wait a second, I can just inject this right here, right now with a GM intrusion. They have the option of, you know, paying the XP to not do it. I hardly ever see that happen, though. Everybody wants that XP from the GM intrusion and then to see what I throw at them. But like I said, it's not, I don't ever have a railroad personally. It's like, it's hard to keep you on a railroad when there's no tracks. It's more of, I just had this really cool idea and I need to inject it now, otherwise I won't have an opportunity to inject it again, most likely. Or again, I store it and save for another session. But usually within that one session, the easiest way of getting that new idea out is just via GM intrusion. I mean, at least personally, that's how I kind of use that tool.
GM intrusions to me are a godsend, and it is not railroading like Al said, because for the most part, I don't think, between me, him, and Anthony at least, we don't sit down to the table with, you know, a track that we want players to run on anyway. You know, we build our outlines, you know, for the concept and the grander scale of the idea, and we move forward. GM intrusions are a tool that most people, you know, would say is railroading, you know, but that's only if you're that type of GM. You know, it can be abused. Of course, it can be abused, but it can also be denied on a regular basis. And then, you know, your GM intrusions, you know, especially the ones you get from ones and stuff like that, should kind of be themed around whatever triggered that particular GM intrusion. You know, you shouldn't be, you know, a person shouldn't be attacking somebody rolling a 1, and, you know, your GM intrusion is, yeah, the road you were walking down no longer exists. You have to go this way. You know, that would be some real bullshit. You know, I think GM intrusions are an excellent tool to make you a better GM, in the sense that you start to stop thinking about a 1 as a failure or a fumble, and it's just a way for you to inject a glitch in the story, a twist, a complication, if you will. And, you know, I mean, anybody who's watched the show has probably heard me talk about my favorite GM intrusion. You know, playing a fantasy game, we had the guy running around, you know, he was, you know, pulling his Mad Mardigan, you know, from Willow aspect, you know, he was the greatest swordsman in the lands. And they faced off against, you know, the city guard. And he finally rolled a 1. And instead of him breaking his sword or throwing it across the room or hitting one of his friends, I had the guard catch the blade of the sword and look at him and go, "You're not as good as you think you are." Or, "No, you're not as great as you think you are." You know, and that basically ended up giving me a whole new NPC to plague the party and so on and so forth. You know, it was great. So basically for the rest of that particular encounter, anytime he faced a city guard, you know, he was hindered. That was the GM intrusion. It was cool because now it's like, wait a minute, what kind of elite, you know, training are they giving to these guards? But it was just the 1, you know, and this is the kind of stuff that I think GM intrusions are great for, because they give you the opportunity as a GM not to just nerf your players. You know, I mean, how stupid is that? You know, this guy's a world-class swordsman, but somehow, some way, you know what, he throws his sword across the room. You know, that was always something that bugged me with D&D. You roll a 1, oh, you dropped your sword. Oh, you broke your sword. Whatever, you know, this way I can do something cool.
Exactly. The way, again, if you came from D&D, it's very easy to see especially the natural 1 GM intrusion as a, like a way to, let's say fuck you to like your players or whatever. It's like, haha, you fucked up, you dropped your sword, you hit your other player or whatever, or you hit your teammate.
Whereas in Cypher, you can have a lot of narrative fun with it. Like you can like Dean does, I can't even say much more. Dean had a perfect example. He had this no-name NPC that turned out to be a major NPC because of a natural one. Like, that's the sort of thing you should be trying to strive for with these natural ones and your own GM intrusions. It shouldn't just be to stick it to your players. There should be some sort of like I'm drawing a blank on the word I want to use. You want to use just something fun, something that's going to add a little spice. And again, sometimes that is a detriment to the players, but it doesn't have to be a complete like fuck you, like you broke your sword, you dropped your sword.
You know, it's not a fuck you. It's not like you're giving the players a fuck you. Is what it is. You know, this way you're literally giving the players something to strive for. You know, because that player literally, you know, we played like 25 sessions, and his goal became, I'm going to find this guy, we're going to have a duel, and I'm going to win. And he never could find him when he was in a position at his strongest, at his best to have the duel, you know, and I would use that randomly. They would roll, one of the other players might roll something and roll kind of shitty, and that would be the catalyst. Okay, if such and such rolls this, then he's going to show up. You know, and it was stuff like this, you know, so this guy was injected into the game, you know, as a fun tool. And it was great, you know. And Lord and Lady Mills, I don't know who you are, but you keep making some excellent points. You know, she said a railroading GM is going to railroad anyhow. May as well get some XP out of it.
The whole point was, yes, even though a railroading GM in Cypher System might try to railroad you, you as the player actually have agency within the mechanics to deny that. Hey, here's your XP back. That intrusion is not happening. If you roll a 1, GM intrusion still happens, but you have an XP to try to still succeed at your task. You can re-roll that 1. GM intrusion is still going to happen, but you as the player can take failure out of the equation for that intrusion. Now the GM has to think on his feet, oh, what's going to happen now instead?
Exactly.
And it's so elegantly designed. I love it.
So I want to move into number 2, and Al's going to bring us home with the big number 1. But number 2, I laugh at this one too, because people say ciphers are hard to understand or use. I don't understand why, but that might be just me. Maybe my brain is broken, because all a cipher is a disposable bonus. It's a disposable idea. They've just put a label on it. You know, how many games have you played and you're walking around with a bandolier of grenades? Those are ciphers. Those are detonation ciphers. You know, the only difference with Cypher System is the fact that they put a limitation on it because they want you to use them and not hoard them. So the idea is use them so you can get something else. And within, you know, various games, you know what, some games, you know, it doesn't have to be a physical item. It can be an idea. You know, me and Anthony actually went through, me and Anthony actually have this thing we like to do. We like to give our ciphers like cool names, you know, especially like subtle ciphers. Like I have one cipher, a subtle cipher that I created called I Wish You Would, you know, and then I have Fuck Around and Find Out, you know, and I have, really? You know, these ciphers are like, they literally are just that, but they're subtle ciphers. So, you know, you got your Fuck Around and Find Out cipher. So you're in a conversation with this guy, he's bolstering and da-da-da-da. You play that cipher, you know what, you provoke him, but you got a bonus, you know, against him, you know, for the next 2 actions, the next 2 combat actions against a specific individual, you have basically a free level of effort, you know, against it. You know, the task is eased against him. Boom. So guess what? He even fucked around and found out the hard way. You know, I mean, you know, one of my favorite ciphers, you know, I watch movies a lot of times, and I try to create ciphers, especially subtle ciphers based on them. Like Die Hard is one of my favorite movies to have created ciphers from, because, you know, I have the New York City moment, and that's the scene when John McClane is fighting the big German dude, and that guy was beating on him, and then he raps it, and I'm gonna eat you, and I'm gonna put it, and you know, and it's like, yeah, that's a cipher, you know. So once you embrace ciphers, the ideology behind it, they become fun. you know, and I think it become easy to use.
So I will say, firstly, you're 100% correct, and the easiest way to describe ciphers to someone who's never really played Cypher System, or maybe has played D&D only, or even has just played video games. It's like, hey, you know, like Kenta, you know, that mega elixir you have in Final Fantasy? Boom, that's a cipher. You come from D&D, you know that scroll of invisibility? That's a cipher. You know that potion of healing? That's a cipher. But I think one of the biggest confusions around ciphers comes from the fact that they have levels. And a lot of the time, the levels don't do anything for the cipher. And again, that's not I know that they mean something for them, but they don't adjust the effects. Oh, that changed?
Yeah, they fixed a lot of that with the new book and stuff about the levels, because that was a big issue, especially with the original edition of Cypher.
So what is it now?
So levels levels do things like sometimes the level denotes the amount of damage the Cypher does. So it might be a level 7 Cypher, so it does 7 points of damage. Levels now will denote the range of the effect, or the amount of people that can be affected by it, or the durations and stuff like that. So they have literally injected into the game that's, you know, so levels become useful, you know. Level, you know, again, versus, you know, you want to throw a level 4 Cypher versus a level 5 character, it might be useless. You know, all these things have been, you know, kind of addressed. So
awesome. So yeah, that was one major point of confusion. I guess it was one for me still. But yeah, it is awesome that they addressed that and made some changes. And yeah, that was one back in the day that I did see quite a bit, was people could not get it out of their heads that the level had to do something, even though there was no mention of the level within the effect of the cipher. And then people kind of just got stuck on that. Like, what does it mean? What does it do? What does that mean? But yeah, it's awesome that they kind of addressed that and changed it up a bit. So, A+. So last one here?
Yeah, Al, bring us home. This one right here, I think we both might have a few things to say on it.
So yeah, so number one, most common misconception in Cypher System, at least as far as we think. Character creation doesn't give you enough options. Yes, we hear that a ton. And on the surface, yes. If you've only read the books, especially if you've only just maybe glanced at the character creation guides or whatever have you, on the surface, yes, it does seem like options are quite limited. Each tier only has like 5 or 6 abilities. At tier 1, you pick 4 of them, and it depends on what type you are. You can only pick like 1 or 2 going up to the next tier, or 2 or 3 depending. You don't get access to 4 every time. It really depends on the type though. But at the same time, a lot of people are forgetting, or, you know, again, they are newer to the system. They don't realize that you're not only looking at the ability list either within the foci, or most of the time the foci is just, you know, static, but it's mostly where the types are concerned, where your customization really comes into play. Because again, a lot of people just look at the base, you know, ability list for each type, but there are rules in place that lets you customize it even further. You can instead go into the flavors list, start customizing from there, add some magical flavors to your like characters, add some technology flavors. It's not all built directly into what the types are. And it does require a little bit more work, but there's a ton of options as far, if you're including flavors and all that, there's so much you can do as far as adjusting the characters go. There's just so many possibilities. It's like the same warrior, or excuse me, the same character could have the same, or two characters can have the same exact sentence, but based on how their types are adjusted through character creation, they can be wildly different.
Absolutely. You ready for this? Okay, so everything Al said is absolutely spot on. But then there's another aspect that many people don't understand, or really don't see. There are optional rules for you to adjust even the abilities within a character type. You can specialize character types. You know what? You can go from being a warrior. Just look at look at Gonza Gaming's work on Mortal Fantasy, how he literally took the existing types and plugged them into D&D classes. I've made types just because, like, I was playing in one game, guy said, you know, you could be a, you know, whatever. I said, I want to play a technomancer. I'll create it. I took an adept and I scaled it down, and then I plugged in the other abilities from the Cypher System rulebook that made this character a technomancer at tier 1. It takes a little bit of work if you want to go that far, you know, to get that level of customization. But like Al said, with the basic line of customization, that's there. But then also, I don't think a lot of people give enough credit to, I don't even look at your character as a complete character at tier 1. You need to play through tier 1. And as you play through tier 1, the ability to customize your character is at your fingertips once again, because you can spend XP within game for short-term benefits, long-term benefits, turning benefits into permanent abilities, and so on and so forth. These things also customize your character in, you know, in different ways. You know, there's nothing in the rules that say, as a GM, you have to lock your characters into following this specific path. You know, that's the railroading part. If your player has a really good idea, let's just say they're playing a warrior type character. We're playing Tallest, we're playing, you know, Gods of the Fall or something. Your character is a warrior, you know, and he's got all these warrior abilities, but you say he's got dragon blood, you know, he's hit down the line somewhere, one of his ancestors was a ancient red dragon. So the character goes, you know what, it would be kind of cool if I had, you know, resistance to fire. As a GM, you can say, you know what, give me 3-4 XP, and your character now has natural armor versus fire. And right there differentiates your warrior from every other warrior at the table. These are little nuances, things that you can do as player and GM to bring that uniqueness. Because I'm sorry, D&D, when you start playing D&D, if you're playing a warrior, every first level warrior is basically the same guy because guess what? They're only different because we inject our thing into it. You know what? My first level warrior, my first level fighter, you know, uses thrown weapons versus Al's first level fighter who uses a two-handed sword. You know, he's different. That's our difference. But guess what? We still roll the same hit die. We still roll the same die to hit. We're still doing basically the same amount of damages, and so on and so forth. And it's the same thing with Cypher System. You just have to think outside the box because it's not spoon-fed to you like another game.
And I will say this, just going back to what you were saying about the being able to, like, or to your specific example of the fire resistance blood or whatever, ancient dragon blood, I believe, and I don't know if this is a core rule or an optional rule or something, I'm pretty darn certain I read it in the CSR though. It must be an optional rule, but either way, you can take abilities, like let's say in this case you would have to kind of homebrew it a little bit, because instead of being trained at fire, you know, resistance, he has fire armor, whatever have you. You're the GM, you can do whatever you want. But the point I'm trying to make here is they take that benefit, but they also take an inability on top of that. So in this situation, you can say, hey, the player might come to you, hey, I want to have fire resistance, I want to have fire armor. You can be like, okay, but if you do, now you have negative resistance to ice or cold.
Right.
Boom. And now it's fair and balanced.
Right. I mean, that's really, you know, and that's really the power of Cypher System. I kind of laugh many times because I was telling you earlier, Al, talking to somebody talking to one of the people on our Facebook channel, they asked a question about how power shifts were expanded, or if they were expanded in Claim the Sky. And I said, no, they were expanded, you know, beautifully. They added in power stunts. They added in, you know, giving up a power shift to get the prodigy ability, and so on and so forth, you know. And I just started giving examples of things that we had done in the past with power shifts and how they were easily manipulated. You know, and then you have some guy come and go, well, the book says such and such and so and so. Yeah, we know what the book says, but that's not what the book says. The book says this is what is at your disposal, and we are showing you how you can manipulate the system, how the system is modular, and how it plugs and plays so you can get the effects and the designs you want. It doesn't have to be written, you know, verbatim. You know, if you look at Cypher System in of itself, it is wholly organic, and it gives you the ability as the GM and the player to be creative within the parameters of the rules without changing a rule, just basically manipulating an idea. You know.
Exactly. I think a lot of this boils down to especially this last point we're making here, this last misconception, is a lot of people. I mean, I feel like a lot of these misconceptions come from people who are originally of a D&D mindset or whatever have you. Character creation, if you're going by strictly raw and you're not looking at, because especially with like adding flavors and whatnot, all that is like a different part of the book. So like, let's say you're kind of, you know, you're in a rush to read, you only read like just the warrior section. If you're only reading that one section, like, wow, this is extremely limited. You're not getting the full grasp of all the things that can actually go into it. And once you actually let go of that like raw mentality that you're only looking at the, you know, this one specific part of the book, like you can look at other books, you can look not just at different sections, but other books too. That it kind of breaks that there aren't enough options mindset, that, hey, I can actually insert whatever I would like to, and it becomes just like that Cypher mindset, a give and take between you and the GM. Because he might say, hey, give me 2 XP, 3 XP, boom, you got your fire resistance. Or they might be like, hey, take this inability in cold resistance and you have your fire resistance. There's so many different ways to play with how your character gets customized, not just at creation, but along the way, that the amount of things you can end up doing is just outstanding.
Exactly. Yes, you are absolutely right, Dave. I had my fuck around and find out Cypher ready. I keep that in my pocket. So,
yeah.
I mean, anything else, Al?
No, I think we hit the nail on the head on all these points. But I will say, if you're watching this on YouTube, or, you know, we've had some nice lively conversations, especially thanks to our buddy Ken here. But were these any misconceptions you held? Let us know. What kind of change did your mind shift a little bit? If you watched this and maybe opened your mind a little bit, let us know. Let us know if there's something you disagreed with. Like maybe, hey, you're actually wrong on that. Let us know. We're always open to more discussion, and that will also in turn help us make more videos that might go more in depth should you have more misconceptions or questions about these concepts. It's just a lot easier for us to delve more specifically into what you would like to hear more of if we hear from you. So,
guys, I made it back in, you know, so Anthony's here, just so you know. So, guys, if you like us and you like what we do, be sure to join our Discord. We have the largest fan-run Discord server for Cypher, all things Cypher and Monte Cook games related. You know, you're not a fan of Discord, you can join us on our Facebook page. Not as big as Facebook, I mean, not as big as our Discord, but it's still getting there. You know, also, please subscribe to us on YouTube. If you miss our Twitch show, we'll always upload our videos. They'll always be free. We're trying to get there, you know, reach that 1,000 mark of subscribers. So we really appreciate you following us, you know, and if that doesn't work for you and you just want to give us a little donation on Ko-fi, you know, our videos will always be free. But Ko-fi helps us out with little things like our Zoom calls and so on and so forth. Donations will always help us out with things like that. And last but not least, you know, you can always buy some merch. You know, you can get your nice Cypher Unlimited things going on here, you know, and we got hats, notebooks, you know, capes are in the work. That is true. We are going to get capes. CU capes are in the works, you know, so show your love, support, come hang out with us. We were always here. We'll always be free. And of course, we love you guys.
There we go. I was waiting to see if he was going to say, and of course, we love you guys. And there we go. He said it. That was the proper Anthony sign off. Perfect. Good stuff. And yeah, you know, thank you everybody as usual for stopping by. It's always been a blast. Dean, do you have any last words as yourself?
Hey, you know what, Ken? Thank you, and yes, we will definitely take you up on that Thursday night, because we have been talking about doing, some more Thursday shows. You were definitely in the lineup, Eric. I'm glad you stopped by, and hopefully we can get you back on the show. Haven't had you on in a while. And hey, everybody out there, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for all your great interactions with us, and definitely, a big shout out to what was her name?
Lord and Lady Mills.
Lord and Lady Mills. Yes, definitely big shout out. Great points. Really loved having you here. Thanks a lot, and hope to see you again.
Yeah, and just to echo that, thank you everybody stopping by. You all are so awesome. And yeah, if you missed the beginning of this, it'll be on YouTube tomorrow. Or if you're watching this on YouTube now, I love you. Thank you for watching. And yeah, from us at the CU, we will see you later.